The story is about a professional guardian called Marla, played by Rosamund Pike, and the story came about because I'd heard news reports about real professional guardians in America, and I sort of went down a sort of a Google tunnel, reading lots of news stories about these people and what they did, and I was sort of kind of horrified about what they were doing, even though mostly it was kind of legal. There's kind of like a legal loophole. And I thought that was sort of like an interesting territory that was similar to, like, had lots of themes in it that I was interested about, of like kind of humans being commodities and like ambition and like the American dream and things like that. So the story started there and then kind of very quickly formed into what it is now as I started writing it. And then so I just sat and wrote it on my own, and then sent it to Teddy Schwartzman, who'd I'd sort of like come into contact with but never worked with before. And he read it and he liked it and wanted to make it, and so we were on. And so we went out to try and find our Marla. The title of the film is I Care a Lot, and that sort of reflects the fact that she works in the caring profession. But the irony being that she doesn't seem to really care about the people in her care, but she has a lot of people she cares for. So she's got a sort of more quantitative care rather than qualitative care. It just sort of, she does say it in the movie that she cares a lot, and it's whether you believe her or not, whether she really does. The tone of the film it's sort of a mixed bag. It's kind of a playful but sort of like dark. There's a lot of people doing sort of things that ethically are a bit dubious. So the tone sort of follows them around as they sort of enjoy being sort of amoral, and so the tone is kind of an enjoyable one, even though you don't really condone what they're doing. You should sort of have fun while they're doing these terrible things, but afterwards feel a little bit sort of appalled at sort of the fact that you were enjoying it so much, I think. Marla is a professional legal guardian, and she's extremely ambitious, and she's smart and determined and focused and charismatic. Rosamund was perfect to play her. Well, because she's such a talented actor. I've been a massive fan of her work for a long time. But she kind of has that very relatable charm and charisma, but can give Marla an edge and give her a sort of like a playfulness that I thought was really, really interesting for the part. And as soon as Rosamund read the script, she seemed to really get the character of Marla. And I think when somebody really gets the character and really excited to play them, and then have come up with all these great ideas and great sort of questions about the character, you can tell that they're gonna be great. And she was. Rosamund's been really great in the movie. Fran works with Marla in the same company, and she's more of sort of the behind the scenes of the company, so does a lot of the research, a lot of the sort of the shoe leather stuff. She's very capable and has sort of a history of working with the police. She used to work for a bail bondsman, so she has sort of kind of a lot of skills that are very useful for the business that they run. And she's got a sort of very strong relationship with Marla. Asa Gonzalez, who plays Fran, is a really exciting actress because she can do all of it, really. She can play kind of emotional and vulnerable on one second, and then she can play sort of very strong and sort of feisty and fierce the next minute, without it sort of feeling like a total switch. She sort of came very prepared and had lots of questions, and really sort of dug into her character in a way which, for me was fantastic. And her chemistry with Rosamund on screen was great. Peter sort of has, such a sort of great sort of wicked kind of look in his eye, and he's got great timing, and it was real pleasure working with him. As for the character of Rukov, he's sort of like the criminal version of Marla. What he does, he's trying to be. When we first meet him, he seems to be like a powerful, wealthy man who has sort of connections to bad guys who can do bad things. And the more we learn about him, the more that we learn that he's not quite the run-of-the-mill bad guy that you expect him to be. And he has complicated relationship with his mother. He is trying to sort of keep in shape and things like that, and is sort of struggling with anger issues, all of which Peter plays really well. And I don't think he is worse than Marla because he does things that are highly illegal and he kills people, but which Marla doesn't do. But Marla's doing sort of ethically dubious things on the right side of the law, and he's doing ethically dubious things on the other side of the law. So I don't know if it means that we root for Marla a little more, but I think it means that you can sort of see that both these things sort of exist in sort of like a yin and yang kind of harmony with each other, and so they're kind of very well matched, pitted against each other in the story. Jennifer Peterson, when we first meet her, just seems to be kind of like a very kind of comfortable, borderline wealthy, pretty wealthy, older woman who's downsized, owns her own home, but has no family. He's just sort of getting on with a nice, comfortable retirement, which is why she seems like the perfect score for Marla, whose business is taking advantage of wealthy older people, and especially as she has no family, she seems to be the perfect mark because there's no complications. But the more we find out about Jennifer, the more we realise there's lots of hidden depth to her and a lot more complications than Marla or the viewer will hopefully see at first glance. And Diane, Dan's got 2 Oscars, and this has been in like some of my favourite movies, and it was so exciting to get to work with her. And she comes with obviously a lot of experience and a lot of great sort of acting instincts, but she also has this a wicked sense of humour, and she can turn from like a vulnerable older lady who's she can go from being a vulnerable older woman who's being taken advantage of, and sort of turn into somebody who's a little bit less vulnerable and a bit more threatening. So it was really fun to watch Diane sort of do those changes. We got very lucky with our cast. We got a really good ensemble cast, quite a deep bench of not just the main cast, but the supporting actors, including Scoot McNairy, Chris Messina, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. We have all sorts of people in there who I've been big fans of for a long time, and every time they're in a movie, they make the movie better, and they're really reliable, and they get to do something a little different from what they usually do. I don't know if I have a specific way that I work with actors, because directors never get to see other directors' work, really, so I just work with them the way that feels like instinctively natural to me, which is mostly talking to them. So Rosamund and I were talking for quite a long time before we started shooting the film, and we'd watch movies together, and we talk about the character a lot and kind of go into the character's past and do a lot of that sort of work. And I did a similar thing with Asa. We talked about the character's past and what they'd sort of been through, and sort of build a backstory for them, which then by the time we get to shoot, then they're not really thinking about that, but hopefully they've sort of absorbed it and they're sort of informing everything they do. But mostly it's just a conversation. You hire really good actors, you sort of let them bring their ideas, you see what they can do, and then you just sort of tell them what you're thinking, and hopefully if it all works, then you're all trying to make the same film. The director of photography was Doug Emmett, and this is the first time I'm working with Doug. I really, really liked the film Sorry to Bother You that he made with Boots Riley, and I really loved his sort of his framing and his use of colour. And with all the HODs, I had a very specific sort of look and colour palette in mind for the film. It's not quite a naturalistic world, it's a slightly heightened world, and so finding heads of department that were really enthusiastic about that and bringing lots and lots of ideas. So Doug, we talked a lot about the references that I had, and he was really excited about them, and the kind of photography that we both like is very similar, so we started getting each other excited about the possibilities, and started talking about the different cameras and stuff, and Doug's really shot this to be sort of punchy and colourful and dynamic and sort of reminiscent of sort of films of like the 50s and 60s, and having that really sort of like colourful, punchy look. And I think it looks very distinctive, and I think he did a great job. Costume designer was Deb Newell, and she, with Michael and Doug and Deb, we all got together at the beginning and talked about the colour palette, because I had a very I was determined to make this quite a colourful film, because the films that I was thinking of as influenced by like the 1960s films by Goddard and Technicolor films from the 50s, as well as like early 90s kind of films shot on film. They have this really sort of high contrast, punchy, colourful look, and rather than sort of suppress the colours, I really wanted to bring them out. So we sort of looked at lots of photos, all of us together, and sort of talking about who was going to take charge of colour in the scene, and we really worked out where the colour should go, and we all worked in collaboration with each other. And Deb really rose to the occasion with, especially with Rosamund's wardrobe for Marla's character, that we really have really big pops of colour in there of like bright yellow and bright red and teal, which really fits into the world that Michael Gracely built for the character. And so together, all three of them like helped shape this sort of very specific look that I was really pleased with. When an audience comes out of I Care a Lot, hopefully they've been on an enjoyable ride with this charismatic character who's a little bit despicable, but sort of enjoyably despicable. So they should come out feeling like they've had a good time, but at the same time they should kind of feel like, well, should I have a good time watching what they're doing? So I think it's it should be it's a fun movie, but it should leave you with a little bit of grit in the oyster at the end that kind of keeps you thinking about maybe the wider world.